Hello, everyone, and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. We may all be wearing black, but it's definitely not a funeral today as Rangers ran out 3-0 winners away to Dundee. I think we were all potentially waiting for a bit more of a difficult game than we got, but Rangers thankfully finally managed to come out the traps quickly, and it put us all at ease, at least for 60 minutes until Dundee started to take over the game. But to join me tonight to talk about the game, all the big talking points put around Rangers, and to do a wee bit of a review of Danny Rohl's first 3 or 4 weeks in charge, I've got JB and Hef. Starting off with yourself, JB, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Nice to come onto a pod where it's positive. Especially after Thursday, I felt as if it was I think we were all a bit down in the dumps, weren't we? So ideal result going into the international break. So yeah, no, it's big smiles for a change.
Absolutely, it's been a bit of a contrasting week. Hef, how have you found it, and how are you feeling now that we're heading into, I guess, frustration that we're heading into an international break? But how are you feeling as a Rangers fan and on Rangers' position as we do?
No, I'm happy. I almost wish we could just take ourselves out of the Europa League to save ourselves that black mark every week. But I think if you take the European games out of the way, domestically it's been a massive shift. So yeah, all happy on my front. I'd have taken a 3-0 today before the kick-off 100%. So yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. JB, just before we get into sort of today's game and what was good and what wasn't, that Europa League challenge, I guess let's call it, I think we all know that this squad isn't up to playing at that level at this stage. Obviously, hope that some new additions plus some tactical changes and learnings, I think, can help us to compete at that stage going forward. But at this, especially against a team like Roma, like we saw on Thursday night, we're just not at the races when it comes to that. Is it very much we just need to focus on league business and use that as a barometer at this moment in time of where we are and how we're making progress?
I would say so, yeah. The only thing I would say is we've got to perform in Europe. Naturally, results won't always go our way, but I've always had a view of the last few years in all the European competitions, beat the teams that you're supposed to, and everything else would kind of take care of itself. So, like Roma on Thursday was I know we should never say, but it's a little bit of a free hit in terms of expectation. But what you'd expect in them type of performance is 100%, and I don't think we've been seeing that. You can kind of see, and again, it might almost be a case of the players, one, aren't good enough. I've said it a few times. I don't think the players are fit enough or physical enough for Europe. So I think that's one of the things we're being found out massively, even against teams like Sturm Graz, Bruges. Who was the other one we've had recently away from home, and Genk at home. These type of teams, we'd have probably swatted aside in years gone by because I think we'd have worked harder than them. That mixed them with the little bit of extra ability that we would have had. That's been the most disappointing thing for me this season. Is just the way that we've kind of competed in Europe. But in terms of domestic, we're craving domestic success. You know what I mean, on all three fronts. Obviously, one's now out of our hands, so it's just down to the other two. And I think one thing I think the manager is doing, he's going horses for courses as opposed to just one style fits all. I think we've seen 4 or 5 different formations in the handful of games that he's had in the 3 weeks he's been here. 3 weeks, it feels like he's been here. Feels like he's been here much longer. Probably goes to show that.
I think that just shows the quantity of games though that we have at this stage of the season, and actually as a new manager, a new head coach, how difficult that must be to come into that and try and put your own stamp on a team and try and make changes. It can't be easy, JB, to come into that and actually make much of a difference. So it's actually really positive from my perspective and quite impressive that Danny Rohl's managed to do what he has been able to do from a league perspective.
Most definitely. I mean, the team are on the floor, the absolute floor. And even if you look at the games that we've had in the league since he's kind of come back in, I think the most impressive one was probably let's have it right. We should be winning these games. Do you know what I mean? It's not a case of he's worked too many wonders, but what he has done, I think he's given us belief. I don't think I went into today's game with a fear. I went into today's game, right, well, we've set the bar at Hibs. Now, Hibs are a decent side in comparison to the rest of the league. Certainly within the top 4 or 5. So for us to go there, and I still think that was a really comfortable match for us on the night, albeit we've defended really well, and there was a penalty save, but they didn't open us up too much. A few late crosses towards the end, which you're always going to get. But I think in terms of his 3 domestic league games, you can see there's more fight coming from the players. I think the manager nailed it at the end in terms of there's no way on this earth you'd have seen Magoma blasting down the left hand side in the 90 odd minute of the game a few weeks ago. I think players were genuinely hiding a few weeks ago, especially when things weren't going well. So to turn that round in such a short space of time, players seem to have a smile on their face. And one thing that he has done, he's brought the relationship back, certainly with the management team and the fans, because that is massive, and the momentum of that is so important. I thought the fact that they were singing his name so passionately throughout today's game, I think was testament to kind of what he's done. That I think we can all kind of see now. There's a team there domestically that is really they're trying, and that, I don't think that's always been the case so far this season. So no, I think certainly league wise, it's all thumbs up for me.
Yeah, Hef, this comment here, I'm not going to read out the name because it'll take me ages because it's all numbers, but comment here says that was almost felt like a routine win. Is that maybe one of the biggest compliments we can give to Danny Rohl at this stage, given how we started the league season and how we performed in games against any opposition? It wouldn't really matter who it was. Is the fact that felt like a routine Rangers win away from home, clean sheet, 3 good goals? Is that almost one of the biggest compliments we can give to Danny Rohl at this moment in time?
Absolutely, and especially considering routinely that's not been the case. We've struggled, not just at home, but especially away. I think that actually in the last few seasons, Dens Park's been somewhere that we have probably struggled. I don't know whether it's just the timing of the fixtures or whatever, but I felt as if today, especially like going 2-0 up within the first 20 minutes or so, you just felt as if we were in control of the game straight away, put our foot on the ball and just looked a kind of class act for a change. And
yeah, what did you make, just to pick up on that, Hef, what did you make of how we set up at the start of the game? What did you make? Why do you think we managed that quick start when in other games, and pretty much all games this season, we've had a pretty slow start and it's taken until the second half to get going? What do you think was different today?
Well, if you look back at the first game that we played against Dundee, I thought the problem that we had under Russell Martin was that they had the big boy Simon Murray up front, and everything was just a big lump up to him, and we couldn't fix it at all. There was nothing that we could do. Anytime the ball was going up, it wasn't sticking. It wasn't sticking with any of our forward players. Now, I think that's reminiscent of what we've seen in the second half against Dundee today. Is probably more of that more directness, that it wasn't sticking up front, and then it just invited them to play the ball in our half a bit more. The difference that I probably saw today in comparison to the first time we played them, Simon Murray wasn't starting, so that was a bit of an ease off on our centre halves, because that boy Aqua was absolutely mince. But the other side of it was that because we were so quick in the transition and the attack and breaking their press, it meant then that we were playing a lot of the game in their half, and not only, they were obviously they weren't playing like a low block or anything, but they were trying to make it compact. And how many times have we been sat going, we just kind of want the break of the green, the luck of the draw type thing, and that ball just scuffs off Danilo and Mikey Moore takes it and smashes it in 2 touches. That's not a Rangers team that we would have saw at the start of the season, totally lacking in confidence. So I don't know whether or not that just comes from having the previous 2 wins, or whether or not that comes from Danny Rohl's messages, or whether or not it's a mixture of the 2. But I thought that there was a significant difference. And while you were talking there, I was on my phone and I was just having a wee look. We have scored the same amount of goals in the last 3 games under Danny Rohl as we had the previous, how many ever games with Russell Martin in the league. We've scored 7 goals, and that's how many Russell Martin tallied up. I think that's the difference.
We've also got one more point.
Well, aye. I mean, it wouldn't have taken Carol Vorderman to figure out that maths. I don't think Russell Martin had chopped up too many. But
8 and 9, I think it was. Martin had 8 and he's got 9. Yeah,
it's staggering, but that idea of like, I actually think it's really good that boy has picked that up, or female, I don't know. But that number has brought that up. But the fact that it's routine, me and Ian were talking about it at the Kilmarnock game, was we just want a scrappy 1-0. We don't care. We just want to get points on the board. And then there's part of you that feels like when that second half goes into a bit of a lull and it's not progressing very far, you start to go, come on, we need better. And you think, no, this is exactly what we should be doing. We should be seeing out games 2-0, making it 3-0, and the last was just icing on the cake. But no, there shouldn't be too much to talk about when you win 3-0, but there is, because we haven't been doing it that often. So, yeah, I was very pleased with how we played, especially that first half hour. And ultimately, that first half hour kind of secured the rest of the game for us.
Yeah, absolutely. JB, one of the, I guess, most noticeable improvements in performances over the past 3 or 4 weeks under Danny Rohl has been Mikey Moore. Nicola Stubborn said Mikey Moore is making a difference. The rest looks as if they could go back to their usual crap at any time. It's hard to disagree with that, to be honest, but just want to focus on the Mikey Moore part of that comment first of all. Why do you think we have seen such an improvement from him? Is it as simple as he's moving centrally instead of playing out wide, or is there more to it, do you think?
I think it's just confidence, isn't it? I mean, we're such a demanding fan base that kind of every single touch, every single pass is scrutinised to within an inch of its life. I think, as the contributors just said there, there's no doubt he's got quality, and I think you can see. Unfortunately, we're only seeing it in glimpses, which you tend to see from young players. Do you know what I mean? So I think for him, I think the fact that everybody else is playing that little bit better is kind of giving him a bit more of a platform. I think we're still not going to probably see the best of Mikey Moore for me until we're actually playing well. I agree with Hef. The first 30 minutes I thought was really good today. I do think kind of the middle 60, the 68 minutes after that, I think was. I felt anyway. I thought we were starting to creep it back into a little bit of form, back to form. But you know what I mean. In terms of the way that we've been playing this season, it was almost a case of a little less braver. It was almost like pot shots here and there. You could tell that Tavernier and Suter were wanting to keep us as deep as possible. And again, that probably just comes with a little bit of a. I think there's still a little bit of a fear factor there with this team, and that is good. That's going to be a habit that's going to take a while to shake off. How many times today did you see the manager in the last 60 minutes urging the players to kind of push on and really go for it? But I think there is still a little bit of a mentality shift needed to go, you know what, you're better players than most of these, so just go and show it. And I think players like Moore, I think we'll see the best of them as the players start to get that belief as we go through the season. I've been a big doubter. I've had massive doubts about Mikey Moore and whether he's actually got that ability that we were talking about, or is it just a case of he's good playing against other kids, hence the reason why he's been good at great at youth level. He's shown a couple of glimpses in a couple of Europa League games against pretty poor opposition for Spurs, surrounded probably by some world-class players. So it was almost a case of, was it a worthwhile exercise? But I think performances like today and his performances when he came on in the Old Firm in the semi-final last week kind of show that he's definitely got something to offer, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses, because we've got a run now of a couple of decent games that I'd like to see him kind of really push on, between Livingston, Braga, Falkirk. The next 3 games, I know every game's kind of pivotal for this team, but if we can come back from the international break and get 9 points on the board, or 6 and 3, then I think that would be a massive plus. And I'm expecting to see guys like Moore just given more minutes now and seeing where he goes.
Yeah, Hef, I brought up a couple of comments. I'll bring them up again. Andrew Gill saying it looks like he's been given freedom to move. Nicola Stubborn saying he's learning quick. That's what happens with good players. On the other side of it, sorry, before I do go to the other side of it, Robert Fisher here saying Rohl is loosened the shackles on Moore and he's benefited massively. Dado Purzo Blue Boots says, still don't rate Moore, spent £3 million on a loan. For that money, he should be scoring every game. I think we've got a bigger problem with our £8 million striker than we do with our £3 million young player.
Sorry, Craig, just before you go to Hef, one thing I did like about him today was he celebrated like he just scored a goal, as opposed to one thing I didn't like today is Raskin and Gassama, for whatever reasons, covering their ears. I mean, I don't know where they think that criticism's coming from, and Schmidt done it the other week, and I think we've seen it 3 or 4 times now this season. You can stop doing all this and covering your ears when you win 3 or 4 games on the bounce. That was the only. It was a little bit of a negative for me that I didn't like. I know, I didn't like the fireworks. That was the only kind of little bit of a negative for me today. I don't like that. I remember Josh Windass doing it a few years ago, and you're like, who are you? Do you know what I mean? To be kind of behaving in that kind of manner. Whether it's aimed at the fans or whether it's aimed at the media, I don't know. But I think that is something that I think somebody with the right optics within the club, it's just a little bit pointless.
Yeah, I might have missed it with Gassama. I thought Gassama just did his normal celebration. I think he's done for all of his goals so far.
Just the fingers in the ears. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's a Rangers Star thing, but I'm not.
I think that is his normal celebration. But the Raskin,
I'll let him off. Then he's all right. But yeah, Raskin just a bit.
The Raskin one was weird, Hef. Though, what do you think that was all about? Because he hasn't been showing up in these games and he hasn't been performing.
No,
I think all he's been good for is winning the occasional header at a corner. So what do you make of that reaction from Nico Raskin in particular, who has received a lot of plaudits from fans and backing from fans through the Russell Martin issues that were there, and is, I would say, yet to repay the fans for the support that they've given them?
That one game after that, where they had kind of made amends and he came back. I don't know if it was it Hibs at home?
Yeah.
And he came on and basically ran the whole show, and it just showed you like when he can be bothered, what he could actually be capable of. But as you said, we've not seen that. Belgium have seen the best of Nico Raskin this season. It's not been us, and that's not been the case obviously for the last season. Well, the second half of last season, I thought he was our best player hands down. Like, you would have built the team around him had you been given £20 million to spend on a transfer window, say, just for talking sake. You could have built the team around someone like Nico Raskin. However, he does seem that type of player, doesn't he? He seems that kind of controversial, on the line. I don't know whether or not has that been directed at the fans, because there's been a lot of people in the media talking about how poor he has been. I don't think that's ill-founded. I think it's perfectly natural to criticise a player when they're not performing at their best. Is it at Danny Rohl? Has Danny Rohl maybe been saying that he needs to do better or something, and it's a wee dig at him? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the problem with these things, is when you act in that sort of way, like what we were talking about the other night, Craig, is when you do things like that, it leaves the perception up to the people. So if you just don't,
it's a vacuum.
It's like the referee situation is, and I don't want to go back into that, but like it's that way where if they just come out and say, by the way, here's what it is. Now, obviously, with Raskin doing that, it just then makes us say, oh, well, maybe there's been a fallout. And then it just creates this tumbleweed. It just gathers information about, I heard he fell out with such and such, and you get forwarded many times WhatsApp messages about incidents that haven't happened. But I think that what needs to happen is we just need to say, blanket, just stop that. I don't care who you are or what it is that you've done, just wrap it. Because to me personally, I think if somebody's been getting a bit of stick because they've not been performing well and they go out and score a hat-trick or something like that, on the third goal, maybe you've earned the right to do that, but not that 1-0 at Dundee away. That's me. I've made it now. I'm here. I'm back. Like, no, I don't think so. But I thought on that though, on kind of stupid wee idiosyncrasies that probably make a difference, I actually think it showed the maturity of Mikey Moore that when that second goal went in, he didn't go away and celebrate. He's like, I'm offside there. I'm offside. It's not, and it doesn't do anything. It's so calculated in that moment that you just go, he's so aware of where everybody is. And that might just be me totally overthinking it, but I looked at it and just thought, that's clever. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing there. And I have been his biggest critic. Like, screamed and shouted for him to be taken off, for him to be recalled, everything. But these last couple of games, I thought he has been exceptional, a total breath of fresh air. And I think the comment about having his shackles off is probably fair, but I do think that creative freedom, probably just somebody in his ear to say, listen, you are quality. Like, we can see this at training. Go and do what. See if you need to go into the middle of the park. See if you need to move over to the left wing. I don't care. Just you do what you think's right, and as long as he's getting success, he'll keep getting that message. It's not as if it's a case of, no, we need you to be disciplined and stay as a right winger. I think if he's going forward and scoring goals and being difficult in areas of play, I don't think the manager can tell him, no, don't do that. You know, he's playing his own way into the team, which is what players have really struggled to do of recent times, is make the manager have a decision to make. We've seen players like Miofsky and Danilo and Chermiti obviously change back and forth just depending on, I wonder who could maybe scramble a goal in. I thought Danilo obviously has been good the last couple of games he's been on, but in terms of like that right wing position, it's very much up for grabs, and Ant-Man's not covering himself in too much glory either. So Mikey Moore's putting a stamp on that to say, nah, that's my position, and fair play to him. I would much rather Ant-Man was performing at that same level, and then we would be saying we shouldn't be playing a lone player ahead of a player that we could be developing of one of our own. But I think, given the gulf in quality in the last couple of games, I don't think there's any argument that Mikey Moore plays ahead of Ant-Man. So, yeah, long may that continue.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to the contrast between the two halves and the decision to make 3 changes at half time. But just, JB, wanted to get your thoughts on this one from Robert Robertson. He says, forget Raskin, Diamand is a liability, less than 2 minutes gone, he gives away a free kick in a dangerous position. I actually think Mohamed Diamand is our most important midfielder at this point in time. I think we, for whatever reason, the combination of Diamand with the others works better than anyone else or any other combination of midfielders that we have in this moment in time. I think we play better when Diamand is on the pitch than when he's not on the pitch. Where do you stand on that and Mohamed Diamandi's importance to this Rangers team at the moment? Are you more towards Robert's way of thinking or more towards mine, I guess?
Yeah, I think I see so, to be honest with him. I think, how many times have we sat here and just said it was a nothingless performance from Mo Diamandi? Do you know, like, I don't know what he's in there to do. He shows glimpses of quality, like some really nice turns and some really nice passes, really nice energy. He doesn't, I don't feel as if he looks 100%. He doesn't look, he looks like another player that I don't think is built for this league. I still maintain his best performances that he's had in a Rangers shirt have all been in European competitions. I don't know. I think the ability's there. I just don't know whether he's got the pick my words carefully. I just don't know if he's kind of got the balls to play in Scottish football. I don't know whether it's just maybe too fast paced for him. It's very congested in there. If you think about somebody like Glenn Kamara, in terms of, I know, slightly different players, but very similar skill sets in terms of comfortable on the ball, could make space for each other. But when we signed him, I thought we were signing this goal-scoring midfielder who was going to arrive in the box and can play all across the midfield. I don't know what he's good at still, and he's been there for, someone just said in the comments, this is the 3rd year he's been there. I can't think of a game domestically he's been man of the match. And you think in 3 years, central midfielder for Rangers, now albeit the team hasn't been playing well domestically in the last 3 years, but other than a couple of Old Firm games and a couple of games in Europe, I think he just seems to disappear. And yeah, the fact he went off at half time was kind of a little bit, all right, okay. It wasn't, whereas we should be really disappointed that a £4.5 million midfielder has just been taken off. It was just almost a case of, okay, yeah, Sam, get it. But maybe again falls under the category of if we can start playing well again, because when we were playing well domestically last season at points, he was very good at that point. But again, I think he falls under the same category as quite a few. If we're not playing well, he's not going to grab a game by the scruff of the neck and kind of turn it round for us. So I can see where the comment's coming from. I'm a little bit like you at times in the fact that I always remember the good bits about players and kind of just hope that can shine through eventually. But again, I think if summarising, like most of the players this season, he hasn't had a good start to the season at all. But I think that's because we haven't been able to build relationships. I couldn't tell you who our strongest central pairing is. I couldn't tell you who our best midfield is. I couldn't tell you the best players to have on each wing. I couldn't tell you a partnership up front. All these partnerships all around the team are just drastically missing at the moment. And I also think that comes with experience. I don't think there's anybody can look at the moment and go, "Oh, I'll listen to them." Do you know what I mean? There's this team. It really, I mean, let's keep it positive on the back of a 3-0 win, but there's just no leaders within this team. There's no spine. James Tavernier is obviously a leader off the pitch by all accounts. Seems like a really good guy around the changing rooms, and everyone says how welcoming he is and stuff. But it doesn't strike me as that leader on the pitch for me. Maybe some people might say, yeah, well, he leads by example in terms of his performances and stuff, but that can be questionable at times. But after that, there is really no one. I don't think John Souttar's a leader. I don't think going through that team today, Cornelius, I think, gives you that little bit of experience, but he's only been in the door a few minutes. Raskin, I don't think is a leader. I think he's quite selfish, Raskin, in terms of he'll play the game that he wants to play. And maybe somebody like Diamand just needs an older head kicking round him. Right, you go, you push, you sit, you tuck in, you take the ball when I need you to take it. I just think this team is crying out for someone to coach this team on the pitch. And I think that needs to be, as well as a brand new centre forward, which we'll get to in a second. I definitely think this team needs a central midfielder that can dictate games for us.
Yeah, actually, on the fact that Diamand was taken off at half time, it felt really strange, Hef, that there were 3 substitutes when we just played potentially the most enjoyable half of football that we'd seen all season, and then for the changes to be made. It almost felt a bit pre-planned, like as soon as we're comfortable in the game, we'll make these changes and we'll give these players more game time and more of a chance. What did you make of that, especially because half time Danny Rohl was out early, like telling, was it Chermite and someone else where they wanted him to play and how they wanted him to move. Chermite looked confused, which didn't really help his case in many ways.
Head the ball, jump up, jump in the air every time the ball comes.
What did you make of that decision though? Because it seemed to stop us in our tracks a little bit. Miovski and Danilo didn't do very much, I don't think, in that first half. I'm really getting more and more worried for every game that goes past about Miovski and what he can do for us as that striker. But what did you make of that decision to make those changes? And I think for the Diamand side of things, I didn't take that as a criticism of his performance, I guess.
No, I suppose the fact that we saw the game and won 3-0 would suggest that maybe it worked well. You know, I suppose I didn't think it looked good, but I suppose Dundee didn't really, albeit that they had a lot of the possession in our half, they didn't really do anything with it. So maybe just taking the sting out of the game and committing less men forward just made us a bit more compact. And maybe Danny Rohl was looking to see how we did respond to having that amount of pressure when we were 2-0 up and actually seeing it in a real life setting. I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes. When we had Rob on to talk about the Sheffield Wednesday, he was talking away about you're going to see some crazy movements here. He's going to make some wild changes. He's going to use the whole bench. He's going to do things during the game, change the setup. I don't know whether or not maybe the fact that he's got the international break coming up, he's thought, right, 2-0 up, let's see how we are when we invite the pressure. Let's see where the weaknesses lie, just to get a full understanding of the squad, because it's hard to tell. I know we're obviously saying he's been in for 3 weeks, but it's hard to tell because the challenges he's faced have been significantly different. Like the Celtic game, the Roma game, and arguably the Hibs away game were obviously big challenges. The one away against Brann, you probably think that's too early for him in terms of to actually figure out what's happening. He's just wanting to see through that game and get up the road. But in terms of actually seeing how we perform in different setups, I don't know whether or not he just thought, if we're 2-0 up, here's what I'm going to do, just to see how the squad adapt to that. Maybe the argument for Diamand coming off is that Diamand is not as sturdy, and therefore putting Diamand off and putting Barron on just kind of solidifies and puts more legs into the midfield just to get stuck in. I thought that Asgard coming on just took the sting out of the game completely, because he's such a kind of classy looking footballer, almost like he, in his head, he thinks he's got Ozil 10 on his back and he's drifting, gliding through the game. But actually, when you watch him, he just takes any pace out of the game, and he tries these 30-yard shots straight at the keeper every single game. And I don't really know. He scored that wonder goal. Well, not even a wonder goal, but he scored a really good goal for the edge of the box. And I don't know whether or not there just seems to be that he thinks that that's where he's best to play, is trying to catch the defenders off, cut inside and pop that shot away, and that's how he's going to get success and get numbers. But when you're looking at it and it's not successful, it just looks desperate. It just looks like a player who's desperate to get on the score sheet when others are involved in the play. Like if I was Chermiti and I was playing up front with him, and instead of playing me in, or instead of looking to link up with me, I was just slowing the game down enough to have defenders in front of me to try and block off the keeper's sight to pop off a shot, I'd be livid. Like when he plays in Gassama and when he involves other players in is when we see success, but it just doesn't happen enough. And then Miovski had that one wee flick through to Mikey Moore earlier on in the game. That was like the one note that I've got on here about what did Miovski do, was he put a wee back heel flick through to Mikey Moore just on the break. And I actually thought, I've wrote down here, it's the first time in a long time that I've noticed Rangers making passes blindly, knowing that a player was going to be in a position, like as if we're maybe gelling together now a bit better, and we understand that positionally where we're meant to be, whether that comes from the message of Danny Rohl saying that players need to be in that position, or whether or not it's Miovski playing more with Moore. But then you break that. Then you just break it. All the flow, all the nice wee link-up plays and familiarity on the pitch, but bringing on Chermiti. And Chermiti is brought on, I think, for when we are playing direct in the second half and just try to keep it compact to hold up the play up front and win headers. But he wins one header in the full second half, and he can't hold up the play because I don't think he's ever controlled the football before in a professional setting. It wouldn't appear that he has played football at any sort of level. But in saying that, the ball is played an awful lot in our half. The chances that he is involved in and to involve himself in the game are big lump up balls that he then has to run and challenge for. If he is successful, there's nobody even with him for it to. So I don't know whether or not it's been harsh to criticise Chermiti in that second half, because he's playing up there on his own, because Asgard's floating about in the centre circle, getting in everybody's road, not really doing anything. I did think that just on the turn of the half time that we had kind of sat in anyway, naturally, because we were 2-0 up, just kind of trying to dock the energy levels a wee bit. But when the subs were made, I almost felt as if you could have just walked off and made yourself a cup of tea and came back 10 minutes later and the game would have just been in the exact same position as it was. It totally killed it. But if that was Danny Rohl's aim, then that's excellent game management. But we don't know. It's just there. And my interpretation of it was that he did just want to take the sting out of the game, be 2-0 up, and then maybe towards the end of the game, because he was looking to bring on Lyle Cameron before Cornelius got the injury. Maybe he was just looking to keep it settled and then re-inject that energy in the second part of the second half. But I don't know. I don't know whether or not that's what his intentions were. But in terms of how it impacted the game, it didn't really change it necessarily in terms of the result or anything, but you did notice a stagnation of some sorts, I suppose.
JB, do you think he did try and take the sting out of the game with those changes? Do you think he was just trying to give those players game time in a slightly different setup and see how they got on? What did you make of it? Because it feels like we've not put together a full 90 minutes of football yet. And when you start so well in the first half, you're almost like, okay, just let them keep going, and see where we get to. Because Dundee hadn't had a shot on target, I think, between the 3rd minute and the 60th minute or something like that. I think they weren't posing any threat whatsoever, and then the way we were playing, and we were looking good and dangerous and playing some semi decent football for once. What do you make of that decision and the impact of those changes on that second half? And is it given too much credit to say he was taking this thing out of the game and just trying to manage it through?
I think so. I mean, I can only assume the 3 subs were aimed to bring on more energy. He was pushing in the first half. You could see him. He was quite animated on the sideline for us to press harder and quicker. So it was almost a case of, right, used to go and now do that and go and replicate it. I don't think what helped in the second half was there was no appetite to there was a huge gap between our back 4 and Schmidt. And as Hef's touched on there, he's not a professional footballer. Do you know, like, I know that might sound really harsh, but he's just not. I think he's a young lad who should be playing youth football. He should be playing under 21 football now. He should be in a academy. He should be kind of learning his game. Rangers isn't a club that you come to learn how to play football. If we are seeing ourselves in the kind of the economical food chain that we are, then guys like Hamza Engelman can come in and quite quickly you could say this lad's got ability, but he's raw. Then that's kind of fine. But with Schmidt, I don't even see the rawness. I don't see anything. I don't see a touch. I don't see a pace. I don't see power. I don't see clinical. I don't see decent shooting ability, awareness, and it's just, yeah, I feel sorry. I feel so sorry for him because he hasn't put the 10 million price tag on his head. Do you know what I mean? And he's not picking himself to play. But I think there's also got to be serious question marks asked against the likes of Asgard as well. Because them 2 have come on, 2 young lads, should be big physical, powerful lads. I just thought they got knocked all over the place today. I don't think they ever looked comfortable. I think I agree with Hef. Asgard thinks he's something else. I think if he spends less time worrying about his haircut, if he puts as much effort to his haircuts as he does playing on the pitch, as says the bald guys, then I think we'd be onto a winner. But I don't know. It's just so frustrating because and again, don't judge a player on YouTube. But everything we've seen of him seems to be like this high energy, powerful ball carrier, gets stuck in, arrives in the box, wins big headers. And we're just really not seeing that. The only thing we've seen was that little drop of a shoulder against, was it Dundee United at home, and he killed it into the far corner. I'm trying to think if we've seen anything else. We're genuinely Kieran Dowell territory in terms of what he's actually physically offering the team. Because if, with all due respect, if you're getting that amount of minutes and you're not scoring, creating, or at least having really good attempts on target, then what are you in there for? Nadim Brajrami must be stinking in training, absolutely stinking, for him not to get a sniff within this team, because Brajrami, for all of his faults, if he has the same amount of minutes that a few of these guys who've played in that 10 position have had this season, I guarantee you're looking at more goals and assists and more creation. And at least we've seen with Bajrami that he's got a shift in him. Now, I'm not saying let's build a team around Nadim Bajrami, because again, players when they're not playing become better players. We know that. But I think there's enough there to kind of see he's got decent ability. I don't think it would be a bad thing at all for us to start rotating that position. And again, I'll use Lyle Cameron as another one. You give Cameron the same amount of minutes that Asgard's had this season, and I think that he'd come in and really add the value as well. And then the third sub that come on was Conor Barron, who I thought done Conor Barron things in terms of worked hard, not the most ability.
Why do you think Lyle Cameron is so far down the pecking order? I think that's kind of.
I think he had a couple of injuries, didn't he? And whether he just hasn't quite caught up can only be my assumption. We've got to be very careful as well. We don't fill the team full of too many wee guys, because I think one of my criticisms on Thursday was how small of a profile that the team had. And again, you probably can't afford to have like a Raskin, a Diamandi, a Danilo, Gassama, Magoma. You then throw in like a Lyle Cameron. Then all of a sudden you're going to really be physically bullied, because one thing about that team today, it was like the land of the giants. I don't know whether there was they had a player underneath 6'2", but they just seemed like a man mountains all over the pitch, and then for us to contain them the way that we did, given the fact we give away a few cheap set pieces, was quite pleasing. But I think in terms of that, I think the three guys coming on, as I say, were meant to come on to bring energy, and if anything, I think they sucked the life out of the team because of the lack of energy. At least with Danilo and Miovski, I know Miovski had one decent little flick, but very clever movers. Do you know what I mean? They create space by taking players away. I think Hef touched on it in terms of Danilo. Didn't actually do anything too great, but even just like the likes of his movement created that space for more to run into to finish. Very, very clever in that regard. Still needs to be better, still needs to be much better. But I think in terms of this team, it's lacking energy. So hopefully after the international break, your likes of Bijramis and your Lyle Camerons and stuff, they're going to get a chance, because there's still a spark missing within this team. There's still energy missing within the team, and we can't put all of our eggs in one basket till January. So we're going to have to learn quickly about what we have got access to, and then we kind of move on from there.
Yeah, Hef, the only player I think that seems to have fallen out of everyone's minds, and it only pops back in when he comes on for a substitute appearance. But Oliver Antman came on today.
What about him?
Couple of good crosses, but nothing major. How do the player we saw in that first game versus what we've seen since is two completely different players. The player that the stats from last season in the Eredivisie show is a very different player to the one we are seeing just now. Is it just a case of moving to a new country, trying to settle in, or different style of football, more pressure? Is it, how do we get more from him? Because I was expecting much more than I've seen.
I don't know. I think the Eredivisie is quite similar to the kind of playing styles that you play up against the teams to the Bundesliga, and you quite often see players that go out and play in the Bundesliga, and then when they come over to Britain, whether it be for Scotland or England, they don't get that. The balls don't come so quickly, like over in between the centre back and the full back for them to run on. I thought Neil McCann's comment in the commentary was probably the most accurate. As he's a single line runner, or he's just, if he runs in the one path without having to do anything, he's a sprinter. Like, he will beat players in a race, and I think that's probably been more of his ability of when he's been playing for a team that, by all accounts, would have always been the underdog to beat the slightly bigger teams in the league. They're going to be playing with quite a high line, so the ball's going over the top. If he's just to chase them and then just pass it across the face of the goal to the strikers to finish it off, I think he's in a lot better position. When we're seeing Antman receive the ball now, he's probably like 40 yards from goal, and he's probably got the full back four in front of him to then try and beat. It doesn't look the most skillful player, as in I don't enjoy watching him come 1-to-1 with a man. I think that he does this kind of...
Doesn't he just kind of...
I don't know if that's the actual skill that he's trying to do, but it does. It looks like he's like running on the spot almost, like he's going to go one way and go the other, and then eventually just hits it off the player. And sometimes he's lucky and it goes for a corner, but I've yet to see it work where that skill that he's trying to do has paid off and it's actually got any sort of end result. But I couldn't even say whether or not his delivery into the box was good or bad. I've not really seen enough of it. Most of them seem to just kind of scuff off a defender, or he plays it back the way and back into the midfield. I do think that in terms of like what JB was saying about the physical attributes, he's strong, he's big, and he's definitely quick. I don't know whether or not maybe just if he was over the top if the ball was over the top to him and he got more of those chances perhaps in Europe, like we saw in that first game, then maybe we would end up seeing some sort of better quality of Ant-Man. But in the league, I think it's just going to have to be a case of trying to find a different way of using him, because I think in that position he's definitely got legs. So like, even if we're playing in the back five, I wouldn't be against him playing on that white wing back role as that, because I think he'll definitely run all day for you, and he doesn't seem shy of getting stuck in either.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Before we move on to a kind of Danny Rohl report card kind of thing for his first 3 or 4 weeks in charge, a couple of transfer rumours, I guess, is at best is what we can call them, as we start to, obviously January feels a million miles away at the moment, but it's only 7 or 8 weeks away or so till the transfer window opens. JB, first one was Yusuf Chermiti potentially going on loan to Braga in Portugal, which always surprises me when we get, because this happens quite a lot, we get these kind of rumours where actually Braga are doing much better than us in the Europa League, and they're looking at taking Chermiti on loan, which is interesting. And then the other way, in terms of incoming, it was Genk central defender Mujid Sadiq. I'm going to go for pronunciation wise. 25-year-old centre back, has played in all of Genk's Europa League games. I think 37 appearances last season. What do you make of these early discussions? And I guess more, we all know the defence needs work, and it's good to see that that's one of the first transfer rumours that comes out, but more on the Chermiti potentially going on loan. Even as a strategy from our side of things, because to me, as soon as a player goes on loan, that's them done at the club, pretty much, because I don't remember a player going on loan and then coming back and succeeding for a prolonged period of time. What do you make of that, if that's true and he does go to Braga or a club similar to Braga?
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, you've only got to look at the boy from Fabio Silva. Do you know, like, in terms of, if somebody had said to me he was available for a couple of million when he was with us, I probably would have said, no, move on. Do you know what I mean? We've seen enough. Next thing you know, he's going on to sign for Borussia Dortmund for 30, 40 odd million. And I would love it if we kind of got Chermiti into that space, but at least with Fabio Silva, you could kind of see something. You could see glimpses, but he was frustrating as hell. I honestly do not know where we go with Chermiti, because I appreciate that Kevin Thelwell's told himself that there was other clubs in for him. I think that would probably be his agent, probably telling him that he was in for him, but probably Norwich were probably the other team that was in for him, and we all know why that would be. But I think in terms of kind of what him as an individual, he's definitely, so far he's in the wrong movie. Again, being the positive Rangers fan, do we come back from the international break? We've got to say we've got 3 really good games that we can kind of get our teeth into. It would be sod's law he scores the winner against Braga. I was hoping from the Kilmarnock game he was going to then kick on and kind of show a little bit more what he's got, probably play with a little bit more arrogance, a little bit more confidence. But if anything, he got worse. I think in terms of there's just nothing there. I think he worked hard against Hibs today. To Hef's point, I think he won one header. There was a ball that got crossed over to him in the after about 15 minutes after he come on, and you've got to either put your foot through it or you've got to control it, and he did neither. It bounced off his shin and went out for a goal kick. Yeah, the optics are horrific on this one, because if he goes out on loan, then if Kevin Thelwell's position wasn't tenable, I don't think it is tenable, then I think that is the final nail in the coffin. And if a new manager comes in and sees that, and that's the recommendation that he makes, that this guy is just not going to make it at this football club, it's extremely damning. Now, the argument could be, well, he signed a 5-year contract, he's here for 5 years. And I think somebody questioned Andrew Kavanagh in one of the I don't know if it was one of the fan meetings or whatever it was, and somebody said that all this money you've spent on Chermiti, and his response was, "Don't worry, it's not mine. It's not your money. It's our money. So don't you worry about the money." But it's like, well, yeah, there's financial fair play that we've got to balance as well. Hopefully, someone's told them about that. But no, for me, yeah, he's he's done. I just can't see it. I just can't see how it's going to work. I say, unfortunately, we can't get rid of him before January. So ask me the question again on the 31st of December, and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure I know any Rangers fan that's really backing him to still be a success or even have a chance of success. Hef, it's pretty unanimous in terms of judgment on him. But what do you make of it if he was to go on loan?
I think it's probably the only way that we get any sort of money back for him, don't we? If he goes and experiences success at another club, because I don't really see him having much success here. It could be that he gets paired up with Braga with some wonder kid left wing and right wingers who basically just put it on a plate for him, and the numbers go skyrocketing through. And I mean, we saw it with Jose Cifuentes when we bought him, and he went out on loan, and the chat was that we were going to be getting 4 million, 5 million for him, and he did not look like a £4 or £5 million player when he was playing for us. So I don't know whether or not maybe it is just that, like different styles and different leagues. JB touched on the idea that Fabio Silva then goes and signs for Borussia Dortmund. I don't think that at these clubs as well, that if you're spending £8 million on a player, for them, if they see any sort of, like for Braga to go and spend £8 million on a player would still be quite an outlay. I don't think that would be something that perhaps Porto or Sporting Lisbon or something, they probably regularly spend higher fees on players. But in terms of Braga to go out and do that on an untested striker who's playing in league or club football rather, they might obviously have players who are playing in the same under-21 setup or coaches that are in the Portugal under-21 setup that might see something in training that thinks, do you know what, we've got a couple of injuries, we'll take this guy, we'll get him on loan till the end of the season, and then we'll look at it in the summer for a new striker. I don't see it. I don't think, unless we are going to go out, if we can get rid of him on loan and then potentially get someone else in who, I mean, they can't possibly be worse than him in current standings. So I would sooner see him go out on loan and pay some of his wages.
I'm sure Rangers would like go to find someone worse.
Right. We've changed our mind. We'll get Shankland now. 3 years too late. 3 years older. Probably twice as much money it'll cost now. No, I don't know how. I don't know how you get it so wrong when there's so many different options. Like even domestically, and even in the positions that we have bought. Like we've talked about this idea of the Championship strikers don't work, or sorry, the Championship players don't work. Why did we buy so many midfielders and defenders on loan or purchase them outright? But why did we do that? And then when it came to the strikers, who are probably what we need more, is somebody with a bit of grit and guile who knows the British game, can get stuck about it. We bought a guy for Spain who, and some 6'7" guy for Portugal who's never kicked a ball. Obviously, he played with Everton for half an hour earlier in his career, but like I can't figure that one out. But no, I would rather he went away in any sort of fashion. And I think that ultimately that's the only way that we'll get any sort of money back. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're fast approaching the hour. Let's have a look back, I guess, at Danny Rohl's tenure so far and what we make of it, what we think he's done well, what we think he's maybe not done so well, or we've missed so far. JB, I'll start with you. Obviously, game so far, Brann away, 3-0 defeat. Kilmarnock at home, 3-1 win. Hibs away, 1-0 win. Celtic in the League Cup semi-final, 1 each, took them to extra time with 10 men, but ultimately that was a step too far and put out of the cup. And then Roma beating us 2-0 at Ibrox. And then today, Dundee, Rangers were run out of 3-0 winners. Where are the good bits? Where are the bad bits? How would you rate his performance so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go through the different competitions, I think domestic league, I think it's got to be nothing but positive. I think in terms of he's can't underestimate how much he's still learning on the job, not necessarily as being a manager or a coach, but learning about the players that he's got to work with. He's had no pre-season. It's almost a case of you've got to run with what you've got. With all due respect, I doubt he knows a lot about these players. It's not as if he's going into a team like Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, where all us three will probably know most of the squad and we'd know what bits about their ability. He'll be dealing with absolute scraps. And if he's trying to judge how good players have been this season, that would be near on impossible because everyone's been pretty crap. But in terms of the league, yeah, I'm pleased with where we are. I think naturally, if somebody had said to you 3 wins out of 3 in the league, you'd have took that. The cup game, I think he against Celtic, I think that was not a black mark because I think that is harsh. But I think it was that was a poor day. I think for everybody associated with the club, I thought it was a poor performance. I don't think the players looked up for it. I thought they looked weak. I thought they looked scared. I don't think the 3 at the back on the day suited us because it suited us against Hibs because we knew that it was going to be lots of long balls and that kind of worked. But then against them, we should have went up and faced them toe to toe, given the fact that we knew that they had so many injuries. They had youth players playing as strikers. Their defence is all over the place, and therefore we should have really been a bit braver for me in that one. That said, we dominated certain parts of that game, and if we'd have had a little bit more quality and a bit more clinicalness, then it could have been another story. And again, if referees' decisions go your way on the day as well, so that probably falls into that little bit of luck that you need. It goes to show that we've won today. The fact that we haven't discussed the disallowed goal from today, but we'll save that one for the end of season review. But yeah, so there's the cup game, and then in the Europa League games, I'm giving him Bran because he'd only been in the door 48 hours before or something. The players, I think, showed their true colours there in terms of some of them. Absolute shite bag performance in terms of players willing to run, willing to fight, willing to play for each other, willing to play for the fans. It was a disgraceful performance from the players on the pitch that night. And he must have been looking around, looking at the bench and going, yeah, mate, yeah, come on, go on and give it a go, see how you get on. I remember once getting asked to manage a team for one game and didn't know anything about any of the players, just knew them to work with, but didn't know what they were actually like as footballers. So you're putting guys on because you knew they were good guys or you'd heard he was quick. It kind of had that vibe for me. We did go on to win 3-0 though, so yeah, there you go, well done, mate. And then, as I say, the second game in Europe, again, the other day just showed a complete lack of squad to be able to compete at that level. And I don't think he could have probably have done too much more with what he had on the night is probably my assessment on that.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I think for me, the league stuff has all been positive and we're not just winning games by a single goal and holding on. We are very much asserting ourselves on these games and almost getting us back up to where I would expect us to be in the games that we've played and how I'd expect us to be performing and where I would expect the results to be from them. Kilmarnock was pretty comfortable, albeit a Jack Butland error, but you're going to get the odd mistake defensively as you go through the season. So but I thought we recovered from that well. Hibs, always a tough place to go. You're always going to be running the gauntlet a wee bit, but came out with the 3 points and you can't ask any more than that from a difficult place to be, especially with the squad we have. And then today, most comfortable win we've had so far on that one. Europa League, I've kind of written it off, but as you said, Bran, that showed the players for who they really are. And Roma outclassed us, but would expect them to outclass us, and they could have gone up another 2 or 3 gears, I'm sure, if we'd managed to find the back of the net with any of the chances we had. Then League Cup, I was disappointed and impressed within the same period of time, which was a weird one because I was really disappointed with how he approached the first half. But then just when we went down to 10 men, I was really impressed with the way that he didn't just sit back. He actually tried to be a bit aggressive and go for it, and I thought it really worked for us. We just ran out of steam. I think I'm on board with him massively, and I think I'm behind him, and I can see I can only imagine what he could do if he got players that he felt could do the job that he wanted them to do. So I'm really excited to see that. It's just whether we can get that. A lot of people are on Kevin Thelwell's back, and understandably, we spoke about his job being untenable. The only thing I'm holding on to is that he spoke about it in the fan session that I was at, but also elsewhere, he's not signed a player that the manager didn't want. So I'm holding on to that as being, okay, well, Danny Rohl is going to get players that he wants in the door. Some might be recommended through Kevin Thelwell in the recruitment system, some might not, but at least he's going to have the final say. And in that, I've got much more confidence in Danny Rohl's final say than I do in Russell Martin's final say on signings. Not that I think that would be hard, but I think that gives me the confidence as we go forward into January and beyond. But between now and January, it's very much let's go on a run. You spoke earlier on, JB, about the fixtures we've got. I think December's a torrid month for us fixture wise, and also in terms of the way that they fall, in terms of who we're away to versus who we're at home to. But get to December and make sure the gap is no bigger than it is just now. We're 5 points behind Celtic. Currently, we're 12 points behind Hearts, but with a game in hand, they're starting to wobble a little bit, I think, and it'll be interesting to see over the next 4 or 5 weeks after, once you get to the start of January, where they are after that significant number of games at the same time. So I'm not as worried about Hearts as I was beforehand. 5 points to Celtic doesn't seem an insurmountable gap, especially with the injuries they have. So then it's all about us and how we perform and how we play and going on that run, I think, for me. And I've got much more confidence that Danny Rohl can do that, even with the set of players he's got, than I did earlier in the season. Hef, just to round us off, where are you on Danny Rohl and his start as Rangers manager, head coach?
No, I think you're spot on with the idea of the personnel he's got aren't his own. I think the fact that he's been able to do 3 times, which Russell Martin couldn't in the league, shows that he's obviously, whether he's a good man manager or whether he is just a really good coach and the tactics and the message is good, or maybe again it's just that mixture of both. He comes across really, really well. The way that he deals with the media and the way that he comes out and he speaks, he's so softly spoken. That you can imagine just that calm, but you also see, like what you were saying about the demanding on the pitch, is I don't think he's the sort of guy that if you can't actually commit to the performance that he's wanting to, I think he'll nail you for it. So no, I'm impressed with how quickly he has managed to change what looked like a really dismal season into very quickly shifting it into something that could become quite a positive one. I think the Europa League task was always going to be far too tough for him to outdo the damage that had been done already. And I think the League Cup one was probably just, you can't really ask a manager on his first go to master an old firm and see through the result. I think the fact that even after that first 45 minutes, he recognised the mistakes that were made and altered them to then come back and to challenge, I think shows that he is a really adaptable manager as well, which is something that we need. And I think in the league, yeah, I'm happy with where we are. And as we said, we win that the game in hand, and we're certainly putting our name amongst the contenders there. So it's definitely not as bleak as what it was in the Russell Martin days, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And JB, just final word of the night to you. They showed on TV Danny Rohl at the end of the game, kind of, I don't know if it's celebrating with the fans or just starting to get that bit of connection with the fans. I cringed when I saw Fluke come on to do it after that St Johnstone Cup game at Hampden, when he sent all the players over and they were bouncing in front of the Union Bears. But that felt different today too, that very different. As a manager, he will obviously see it as massively important that he gets that connection with the fans, he gets the backing of the fans, and he gets them on his side, which I think he very much has at this moment in time. But what did you make of that? We very rarely see that from our managers in the past. So just interested to get your take on it.
Yeah, really liked it. You know what? I really got a good feel from when I was over in Bran, and he kind of seen him walking slowly over. I just thought he was going to give us the little token clap and then turn away and walk back. For him to jump into the crowd almost, and kind of speak to a handful of fans, and then worked his way around, spoke to a couple of different sections. I thought, oh, I like that. Almost like a really good from a PR perspective. I think he's picked his moment to do that. Do you know what I mean? That could have probably been done in the after the Kilmarnock game. He probably could have went up to the Union Bears and give it the big uns, and you kind of go, "Oh, that's great." I think the fact he's took his breath. He could have done it against Hibs as well. He could have went over and give it the big uns, and he never. But I think he probably felt right that this is the right time to do it. I've been in for 3 weeks now. We've had some good times, had some bad times. And the fans, he must be able to see that the fans are with him. We sang his name, whether it's just because it's a good song, I don't know, but we've sang it. They've sang his name there for the whole of the second half, pretty much. And I think that was just a small way of him saying, "I appreciate it," and I think the fans will respond well. And he's built that togetherness back with a manager, and I think that's ever so important. I think the fans will run with him until January, most definitely, at least, because we know what he's dealing with. We're intelligent enough to know that he's been dealt a really shitty stick here in terms of what he's having to deal with the playing squad that he's got. And again, that does create further questions to powers above. But I think for him, in terms of where he's at and the timing of that, I think we've all come away feeling a bit more happy and feeling a bit more engaged, because we most definitely weren't at the start of the season. So no, good on him. And yeah, let's hope it's a successful international break for us in terms of injuries, and we can come back and get off to a really good start.
Yeah, I'm really interested now to see what we look like when we in that first game back after the international break, and to see if we can see anything that's been changed or tweaked, or anything that's much better. Living hope and optimism of seeing better, and I'm hoping that this time, the first kind of period of time that we'll have on the training pitch, I get that some players will be away on international duty, but there'll be a decent enough core of the squad that will be there that hopefully we see some differences when we come back and more of that progress. My thanks to JB and Hef for joining us tonight. My thanks to everyone who's tuned in to join us live, and everyone that's listening afterwards. If you've not subscribed to the TII YouTube channel, please make sure you do. About half the people that watch and listen to every episode of our podcast are not subscribed, so please make sure you do. We're so close to that 9,000 subscriber tally on YouTube, and it just means that you don't miss out on any content as it comes out. We'll be back throughout the international break. We are going nowhere. Don't think many of us enjoy international football that much, so just be keeping an eye on Rangers and hopefully start to hear some more rumours as the time goes on, as we head towards January as well. But my thanks to everyone for listening. Until next time, goodbye.